There we go. Okay, so officially welcome, Libby and Maria. Thanks for joining us in this evening session. So, Libby, you had a question about guilt. We were just discussing guilt, and you said, "Is there a second cousin twice removed?"
Well, I mean, obviously the three of us would say, that it's crippling. Guilt is crippling. It's disabling. It's, it holds us back. It masquerades as being, useful and doing stuff when actually it does nothing but make us feel bad about ourselves. And we're never actually going to be able to show up in the way that we would like to for ourselves and others while we're making ourselves wrong. So on the surface, if anyone was saying to me, I'm real riddled with guilt, if Maria was talking about feeling guilty, I would say, oh, let yourself off the hook, Maria, please, think about forgiveness. And, we're all here in this together. We're all so hard on ourselves. And, we would all talk like that. We would all talk about how we're much more likely to show up in a good way if we're less guilty than if we're more guilty. But every now and again, I'm in a scenario where my voice says very loudly in my head, you should feel a bit guilty about that. I mean, obviously there'd be certain individuals who are at the moment, I mean, we talked about Brexit early on, so if I was talking about any one of the people in Westminster in power at the moment, I think what's wrong with them is they don't have enough conscience. They don't care enough. They're not able enough to, they're not in, they're in positions of leadership without what would be necessary for real leadership, which would be a huge amount of kind of self-awareness. And so what I actually said, John, to you was, is there a version of guilt? Is there I said third cousin once removed of guilt to make you laugh? But what would the course say? Which is not guilt. It's not guilt. We're not talking about triggering that old deep subconscious fear that we turned our back on heaven. But is there? How do we find in our pursuit of incorruptible innocence, which I would advocate all of us to pursue, this incorruptible innocence that is the essence of who we actually really are, while we're in this duality of the world and we have each other to care for and look to the holy relationship with the people that we are close to, how do we make amends around awareness and an understanding of the damage that the ego can do?
Suppose the word is atonement. We have to do some atonement, won't we?
Well, it's never to make it sinful or guilty, because that makes the error real. You never want to make error real. You can acknowledge error as a temporary error, and be willing to let go. So it's really about correction. It's always about correction. A miracle. Ken Wapnick used to translate the miracle as a correction in your perception.
Which is lovely, because the word sin supposedly comes from an archery term, which is missed mark. Like mistake.
Yeah.
So it's lovely that correction.
So we just made a mistake, and then we correct. So that lady you were talking about earlier, who she'd used someone as the butt of her jokes, and then she forgave herself. Now, if she could genuinely see her error, and she saw her error and she said, okay, I can see that I made an error. I was really creating separation, and it wasn't very nice for that person. So there was a separation in what I did. And I see that clearly, but I don't beat myself up for it. I'm not going to feel guilty about it, because that's really not helping at all. That's not correcting the error. That makes the error real. It entrenches the error.
This for me is the absolute crux of the course, and why I'm interested in it when I think back on my very religious upbringing, which was very Catholic, the gospel, which I was fed in copious amounts, was very much a kind of waggy finger. It was very much a kind of cautionary tale. You better be careful or you're going to end up in the big bad fire. And it had a lot of leanings to guilt and shame as a correction. And one of the things that I say a lot to the group that I study the course with is the thing about the course for me is it's all good news. It's very compassionate, and it's basically always saying what you're saying there, Jono, which is basically you really won't go anywhere with making yourself wrong. You really won't, but you actually have to understand it's all for forgiveness. That's what the world's for. We're here to forgive the world. But the reason I'm interested in the course is because with the backdrop of incorruptible innocence, then I might have the guts to actually look at the error. But I don't think you can miss the step. So, you know, Maria, I think the atonement is right. I think your answer is right, that atonement is the essential final answer to it all. But love brings up everything unlike itself. So, you know, we will fight, our ego will fight for our limitations. And what we do is we give ourselves the booby prize of self-justification and making ourselves right in the scenario and pointing to the bad guys being real bad guys. And that's why we had to attack, you know, so I think the course is really, really challenging us to say that only when we reach for the forgiveness are we able to actually be part of the miracle. But I think, John, one of the things that I feel quite strongly about with the coursework is that we have to look at the shadow stuff.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, that's the correction.
Yeah.
So without guilt. See, so I think that lady, if she really did do a correction in that instance, she was spot on. It's like, I don't have to feel guilty about this and beat myself up, because that's not corrective. That's just self-flagellation and actually making the error real. But I can look at it and correct my mind and recognize, you know, there was a mistake that I made. I believed in separation by isolating this, you know, this particular person and separating them off from the group. And
I don't think that happened on that occasion. I think what happened was the guilt was excruciating, and she could not go there. So instead, she said, "Oh, I know what I'll do. The course will help me make myself okay again." So using course teachings, I will say, "Oh, everyone had a good night, really." So she felt there was nothing to forgive. And sometimes I get worried about course teachings because they have to run in tandem with awareness.
They can be used. They can be used to justify your errors lightly and just walk away like, "Oh, okay, fine, it's fine. You know, I forgive myself." It didn't happen, actually. And what about the other person? What about the person that received the, you know?
You know, Maria, in my study group, I quite often end up being the kind of shouty, sweary one, because it's really clear to me that we have this fantastic opportunity to understand our innocence together, but we have to be brave and bold enough to understand how afraid we are. You know, the petrification that I know I have inside myself is what that solitude is. It's not solitude, John, as a kind of, you know, like, I have found a way to be at one with myself. It's not, you know, people can be alone and be completely tuned into the higher vibration, and people can be alone and be like a shut down dog, you know, in a cat and dog home, you know. So I think that I have to we maybe have to, I suppose what I'm trying to say is, when you start to be a student of the course, the first thing that happens, I think, is you feel that you are hugely self-judgmental, and then you experience judging everyone else. But this is a good stage of the journey, because your judgment is now brought into the light.
Yeah.
I've never felt so judgmental as when I started to study the course.
Yeah, it starts to bring up, all of those errors, and they can seem to be quite acute, and it can be quite difficult to deal with, because before, you weren't aware. Now you come into, much more awareness. So that really, Yeshua is training us to do a hyper awareness. We're really aware of our thoughts and our emotions all the time, and able to identify those that are not serving us, that are egoic, whereas previously we maybe weren't. And so that can be quite hard to deal with initially.
So what do I do with my guilt? You don't know. Tell me.
Put it in a box under the bed.
Let it go.
Let
You
it
let
go.
it go ultimately by realizing that it cannot be real, because none of this ever really happened. That's the ultimate answer to the question. Separation isn't real. Separation never happened. Guilt never happened. So why are you feeling guilty when it never happened? See, this is the really irrefutable logic of the Holy Spirit that is behind the whole.
But it did happen. I know that. I know when the Course in Miracles say that this didn't happen, but in this world right now, in 3D right now, this dimension which we chose to come and have this experience, it did happen.
Yeah, this dimension isn't real. So you have to recognize that what you think is of as reality in this dimension is not real.
It's the dream. It's the dream.
It's a dream. So by definition, it never really happened. The dream is not true or real. And so anything that happens.
Yeah, but at the same time, see, I would say to Maria that it's true that the circumstances, the time and space, the physical doings and goings on don't matter any more than death matters. It's all a non-event. But what is real is love. Therefore, what is real is Maria's leanings and aspirations and thoughts and mind choices. And so for me, I have this thing I do, right, which I have to explain because it sounds bad. I make myself the villain of the piece. The reason I make myself the villain of the piece whenever I feel something's not right or upset is because I want to hoover up, I want to vacuum up any of the learning. So whenever there's a scenario, I would rather, because I understand there is as much violence in the victim as there is in the villain, but the trouble with the victim scenario is I might not be able to see the truth. So if I make myself the villain of the piece with the backdrop of innocence that the Course affords me, then I can see where I might have been more able to bring in some love, as opposed to what I did at the time, which, so, I would make myself the villain of the piece every time, not to stay in guilt, not to shame myself, but to actually make sure that there's always gold in them their hills. That you can always find something to go, wow, I can see why I made that choice, and that was because of, but what a limited space I gave myself to be in. Next time I'm going to be more generous with me and imagine. But I would get guilt on my lap and go, there, it's okay, I'm here now, you know, and just say to it, what did you need to say or do so that it goes properly. You want it to go away happy, like one of your kids, you know, like one of your kids. You want to say, do you need a band-aid? Do you need a hug? Do you need a, okay, right, now go away and play, because it's going to come back. It'll be back in the door 2 minutes later going, oh, I've hurt this. Oh. So it's like you say, John, it's like taking all the air out of the tire. You know, it's trying to just say there is nothing in it that matters, but what really matters is how we approach ourselves, it, others, the scenario, the circumstances, our choices, or just the choice for love is what matters, you know.
So it's about not allowing guilt to rest with us and make the error real, while at the same time correcting it. So, okay, yes, so you know, I see it, and it was an error. I see it was a lack of love, and without guilt, I can see the error clearly and let it go and realize that, you know, that there was just an error. And if you can really do that, then, you know, that's the Course in Miracles is correction or miracle that he's talking about. And you know, if that lady actually did, if she did actually have a correction in her mind, then she did it correctly. If she didn't indulge in guilt, good. And she actually corrected her mind. She saw her errors. Okay, you know, I see the error. It's fine. I don't need to beat myself up for the error because that's pointless. But I see it, and I've corrected my mind, and I understand, you know, why I did that, and I'm not going to do that again because you know, it wasn't helpful for myself or anyone really. Then she's really, you know, that's a good example of how to do it. If she didn't do any correction and it was just like, oh, well, I'm just going to cover it over with this sort of mock kind of forgiveness, and I haven't really corrected my mind, so I might then well repeat it again, then that's not a miracle. Then it's actually the ego is still in charge, and she's just she's using the Course to actually avoid correction, which can happen. I call it, there's a couple of types of forgiveness. So the one is pseudo forgiveness, which is where you sort of self-righteously say, well, you know, I forgive you because I'm such a righteous person, and, you know, I'm Christian and I should forgive you, so therefore I forgive you. But actually in my heart, I'm holding you as a sinner. I still think that you're really guilty and that you've really done something bad, and you will be punished for that, even though I'm the seemingly righteously forgiving you. So that's not forgiveness at all. That's just judgment in disguise.
Yeah.
And then the more kind of subtle one, I call halfway forgiveness or mock forgiveness, where you'll soften your forgiveness by saying, well, okay, you know, someone might have struggled with something in their past. They've had a difficult past, and, you know, they've acted this way because that's the best they could do at the time. And so although they've really done it, and it might have, you know, seemingly hurt me or others, I can soften my judgment of them because I'm trying to understand, you know, why they did it. And that's that's sort of compassionate forgiveness. But it still makes the situation real. And what the Course is saying, no, you know, neither of those versions are really going to work. The first one's not really forgiveness at all; it's judgment in disguise. The second one, there's still a judgment on the world as real, and so it still happened. But now you try and just understand why, you know, the person might have behaved that way. But you're still really trying to pardon what you think of as real, and that's of course not going to work either ultimately. So the radical forgiveness Yeshua talks about is the only one that's really going to work, and that's the forgiveness that goes to the metaphysics of this world and says, well, ultimately this world is not true and this world isn't real, So therefore, anything in this world that seems to happen, you can forgive from that perspective, because none of it's true and none of it's real. And therein lies the complete undoing of your belief.
Don't you think the course takes it even further, John? Because one of the things I feel quite strongly about whenever I'm around judgment in myself or other people is that because there is only one of us here, and we're not bodies, and we're actually spiritual beings having this experience of separateness, then basically, if you're seeing it, you're being it. So what you're actually looking at, which you think needs your forgiveness, albeit pseudo or compassionate, halfway. I can do the halfway. I've done that a few times, but no more than that. But I'm very interested in the idea that when it presents to you, the thing that you find quite unforgivable, or then it's a part of you that is projected out there that you that is up for healing. I mean, the course quite explicitly, I wish I had my book at the moment, that said basically we are 100% accountable for our experience, because we are literally creating what's happening to us moment by moment. So when we find something out there unpalatable, it's a part of our own journey that we haven't quite forgiven yet.
One question. I understand that all this part about us, yes, as our part in it, how to correct and da. What I'm worried about is the other persons. We did something wrong to somebody else, either in deed or words or behavior or whatever. And okay, I recognized I did wrong. Okay, I did wrong. And I admit that, and I say to myself, okay, no point in feeling guilt and beating myself with this, so I really have to let go of this. I made a mistake. It was a mistake. But what I want to know is what to do about the person, the other person, the person that I did wrong. What do I do about that person? Just forget it. Just, okay, that didn't happen. Bye.
Well, there's no absolute answer, because the course is not directed at the level of form and behavior. So it would be context specific. You might feel, if you've really forgiven yourself, you might feel inspired to reach out to that person, apologize, try and make amends, do something. Maybe you do nothing. Maybe yes, Spirit says to you, you need to do nothing. You've forgiven yourself, and you've dropped the guilt, and that's all you need to do. So it's about listening to, genuinely forgiving, genuinely letting go, and then listening to guidance. And, well, what should I do in this situation? And if you feel inspired to do something, then, and it feels like the loving, kind thing to do, and that's part of the healing process, then follow the guidance. And equally, you might feel like you need to do nothing. You can just let it go in your own mind. Remember that it's always about your own mental and emotional state. That's primary. That's foundational. So you take responsibility for that first.
But there isn't. Yeah, I think if you don't take responsibility for that first, then it's just going to be more of the same, whatever happens between you and the other. But I think there's a fabulous opportunity there to say to someone, oh my goodness, my perception of you was just my projection on you. And if you just take back your projection, you say to a boyfriend, oh, you're not my dad that wasn't there for me, and I've been reacting to you as if you were, and I'm sorry for that, and please feel free to be angry and annoyed at me, because who wouldn't be when they're getting dumped on like that, and and if you can find your way to forgive me, and and that would be wonderful, but that's your call. But I think people get. I mean, I'm very clear that Noah's Ark is a big part of the course. The holy relationship is God's quick way for us to return. It's we go 2 by 2. And I don't mean a romantic dynamic. I mean literally every encounter is a holy encounter in potential. Mm. So I think taking back your projection, i.e. your dump, your perception that they did you wrong, that they were more of the same, that they triggered an old pain and hurt in you. If you can go to anyone, whether it be the postman or your neighbor or your husband or your wife or your lover, and say, gosh, it was really clear to me now that I was just setting you up to fail. I'm going to take that all back and offer it up to where it should be. Offer it up to the Holy Spirit and ask for help and just say, I'll try not to do that anymore. Jump to put you in a suit of clothing that's maybe not yours. I think that would be but you're right, John. I suppose if it was a pseudo forgiveness, then it's just going to make more. You're just going to give a wee bit and take more back. I think we've all had these conversations or letters from people that say, yes, you're right, I am sorry. But if you look back on the situation, I think you'll find you were a bit short, and you were one of these apologies that's all kind of one line of sorry, and the rest of the conversations about how you got it wrong. So if you've not really kind of given yourself the okay, and being very compassionate, Can I tell you something that happened to me, which was a situation where I didn't make a decision, and I understood something viscerally, and it reminded me what real peace and real joy and real love looks like. It was a glimpse. It was a Bristol kid with. It was a retreat, a silent retreat, and it was a weekend, and 3 girlfriends were going and one pulled out. And I got the invite to take the place of the one that pulled out. And one of the girls clearly was annoyed that I was coming along because they thought I would dominate, which she was right, that she wouldn't get to be with the quieter girlfriend and a more one-to-one. And I think when the third party had pulled out, she was very glad that would mean it was only 2 of them, because one of the girlfriends that we had is just so quiet and so wonderful and so peaceful and so lovely. Everyone wants to have one-to-ones with her. So I think she was already annoyed I was going to be there. Anyway, we shared a dorm, and it was a 9 o'clock bed and completely silent and stuff. And I struggled to get up to the top bunk with these dormitories. But eventually and it was so quiet and so pitch dark because we were in the Holy Isle, that it took me ages to get to sleep. And it must have been about 2 in the morning before I remember nodding off. The next thing I knew, I woke up and there was a face right in front of me. So I'm in the top bunk, and the voice said, "You're snoring!" Really loud, and my ear really looking on it. And the first thing that happened was I just got an incredible fright. I was just like, oh my, and so it was the friend who really didn't want me there, and she really huffed and puffed and got off the top, went back to her bunk, and I kind of was like, so my heartbeat was going boom, 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 boom.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, what just happened there? What just happened there? Okay, so for the next hour, I really made myself wrong. For the next hour, I thought, you should never have came. You knew you weren't really wanted. You were in the way. And then I thought, okay, I need to get out of this dorm because I can't go back to sleep because I'm snoring. So, there's the library. I'll go there. There was some couches, and maybe I could sneak. And oh gosh, it's dark. And is there a torch? And maybe I could go. Oh, wait a minute. They had tents. I wonder if I could get a tent for tomorrow. wait a minute, there's a boat leaves in the morning. I'm just going to get on the boat and go. I shouldn't, you know. So by this time, there's tears in my ears, and I'm now already in the boat leaving the island. You know, and it's only one night. So, you know, it's a 3-day retreat, and I'm going the next morning, and it's only the Friday night kind of. Anyway, so the next morning, the first thing that happened was just a kind of meditation, and everyone was to turn up. It was 7 o'clock, and everyone was to turn up, and everyone just sat with a blanket. It was cold, and everyone cross-legged sat with a blanket. So I went to the meditation because the boat wasn't leaving until 9 o'clock, and I was still thinking I have to go there. So I sat down for the meditation at 7 o'clock, and the facilitator, who was this wonderful mindfulness teacher, sat down and said, we make ourselves so wrong all of the time that we even make ourselves wrong when we snore. and that was it was her first line. And she said,
interesting, yeah?
And she said, if there's anyone here that actually has been making themselves really wrong for snoring last night, then I really just want to just say this meditation's for you. And so I immediately went into this massive state of grace, just this, you know, just this complete and utter self-compassion. It was like it was like this thing descended upon me that I was innocent, and you know, just tears were streaming down my face, and I just felt the most incredible kind of, I just felt it was for me, you know. But what I understood for the first time in my life was that I was suddenly off the hook, and because I was innocent, so was everyone else. And then I understood that's what happens when you fall in love, when you have that kind of compassion. And so I turned round, and my friend who'd shouted, "You're snoring," was just 2 folk back. And I turned and looked at her, and this big wave of love, this big white sheet of love kind of, you know, went to her. And it was done. It was all over. There was no guilt. There was no shame. There was no need for forgiveness. There was no, you know, I had completely forgiven myself. So the idea that she needed forgiving wasn't even in the picture. It just wasn't. And I realized that when we're in self-compassion, we've taken back all our projections, because the only reason that we're out there going, you should, and you ought, and you could, and if only you, and you know, is because we're out of love with ourselves. We're trying to manipulate and control, and you know, and in this moment of pure innocence, with, you know, this sense of, you know, pure, I just felt such a sweetness of me, you know, just, you know. And it was the words of the lovely mindfulness teacher saying, you know, we're so quick to make ourselves wrong. We make ourselves wrong when we're unconscious. We make ourselves wrong when we're not even awake, you know, we're not even, you know. And it was just such a breakthrough, you know. So for me, I learned about forgiveness there, because the only person to forgive is me. And when I forgive me, I take back my projection, then everyone's free, everyone's innocent. Yeah.
Good illustration, yeah. So I talk about just letting go. You know, it's letting go of that, of your own negative thoughts and emotions around the situation. When you do that, then you free yourself to experience the innocence and the love. And you know, the other person is, as you say, it's kind of irrelevant. It's done in your mind. So there's no need to really do anything further. You didn't have to go say to, oh no, I just want to let you know that I totally forgive you.
Yeah.
Because it's done, and she would probably have felt it.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. So
maybe
your question,
maybe
Maria, if you really do it, and you really have a shift like Libby described, then it's done, and there's nothing further needs to be done. Often that's it on the level of form. Why are you going to go and try and fix anything on the level of form when you really realize there's no problem anymore? The problem's been collapsed.
I think maybe the explanation is the solution is in quantum physics, isn't it? If I work within myself, if I work that within myself, truly, forgive myself, maybe the other person also feels it.
Mm. Oh, without a doubt.
No matter how far away or where or how what something happens in terms of quantum physics, that the other person feels it and either forgets about it, didn't happen, forgets completely. Something like that.
There's a change in the underlying field, and there's a field of energy between two people in any relationship. So if you change your mind, then you affect that field, and they will feel that effect.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not based on time and space. It's an effect that's happening on a mind level. So we're all part of this, field, if you want to call it a quantum field, which is how this gets translated from one mind to another. So our only job is to really, really let go ourselves and find that innocence within ourselves, incorruptible innocence, as Libby put it, and stay there. And that's going to be the most healing thing we can do for the other person as well. They will sense that and feel that on some level, and that will change the relationship with them. And then words and actions can, you might feel inspired to say or do something or not. Just there's no, the course is never prescribing on the level of form what you should do. He never talks about that. He's always saying, go to the mind, do your forgiveness, and the Holy Spirit will guide you as to what to do. And if you need a word, then you'll have a word. If you need an action, then you'll be inspired to act. And if you need but quietness and a calm, open, tranquil mind, then these are the gifts that you'll have. So we've got to really step back and just trust that if we really correct our minds, that everything follows from that. We will be guided as to what to do or not to do, and then we don't really have to worry about the level of form.
I had a nice glimpse recently where my oldest sister there was 4 girls. My mother had 4 daughters and 4 sons and 3 nervous breakdowns. Sorry. So my oldest sister Mary died, and she died ridiculously young. She was only 60, early 60s. So I was very upset, and I wasn't very upset. I was annoyed. I was angry, and I felt like kicking things, and I just was in a kind of huff because I really kept forgetting that she was gone, and whenever I remembered she was gone, it just felt awful. It was just like, just don't want to take it in. I don't want to believe that I'm not going to be with her, and so I was struggling with how to think about Mary, because she was one of my favourite people. Anyway, I decided that I was kind of losing her. I couldn't grasp all the things that she was like, the way that she spoke and stuff, and the more upset I was getting about losing her, the more I felt I was losing her. So I decided I would do the opposite of that and try and remember her. So I started to remember all the way that she spoke to me, because she was always exasperated with me. She was always going, "Oh, Libby." She married a Malteser, Mary, so she'd been in Malta for her adult life. So we didn't see each other as much as I would like, but we FaceTimed a lot and stuff, and I was always on with big things, and she was always exasperated with me. So I started to remember how she would scold me and stuff, and we would giggle and we would really laugh. So the more times I thought about her in a really light-hearted way, or thought about the way she spoke or the way she looked or things that she liked, the more I was laughing, and I started to really laugh about Mary. And then I started to really get the sense of her. She had this funny crooked hand that would go into a kind of cramp, and she'd have to unbend it physically. And I could feel her hand in my hand, and I could feel, so I had this kind of visceral memory of her. And it came when I was really happy about Mary. So I decided that Mary was vibrating at a higher level than I was, and that if I was to get down and depressed about her not being here, then I would lose out even more. But if I was to really sort of get happy about the fact that she was mine and she was my sister, and my attachment to all the ways that we were together, and I started to vibrate higher around Mary ideas, then I got her better. I got more of her, you know.
That's lovely.
Yeah, and that was just by accident. That was just kind of by accident that I thought, gosh, you know, it really is just about the field of energy that we're in. You know, it's just we're all, you know, and that we don't separate. You know,
It's impossible. Yeah, that field is one field. So, you know, from a quantum perspective, we're all connected to the field.
Yeah.
And everything anyone thinks or does or feels goes into the field. So it affects everyone.
And I had to forgive Mary for dying. You know, I had to forgive the world for being a world without Mary in it, you know. Which I don't think I'm quite there yet, but when I remember her and I together, and I then what I remember is really good stuff, you know. So as long as I can get back to the giggles and the carry on, and you know, and her voice, that was the funny thing. The more I laughed, the more I could literally hear her. Not hear her voice, that's not true. Literally hear her voice, that's not true. But imagine that I because she started to have this silly voice, Maria. I don't know if you know people who, but you know, is, you know, Latin American. But Mary started to speak like this. You know, for me, she was like, I was going, you talk like this, Mary. Why do you talk like this now? You think you're Maltese? You come from Scotland, you know. But you know, she was like brought up with us in this big housing scheme in Glasgow, and you'd go to Malta, and Mary would say Maltese words and speak like this, you know. So I was always mimic her funny Maltese accent. So it was when I got into this, I could hear this silly Maltese voice, you know. Yeah. So I'm going to do that with it. Everyone that goes from now on, I'm going to do that with.
Well, I think the key thing was there is you connected with the joy.
Yes.
Instead of focusing on loss and sacrifice, you focused on, you know, the good experiences and the joy, and then of course you're going to connect more with her because that's her true nature.
Yeah, that's her true nature. Yeah.
And actually that's appointed to, you know, eternal joy. You experience that in a holy relationship with anyone. The source of it is the life itself. So yeah, you know, that's quite a good strategy to deal with death, I'd say. Focus on the good things and on the experiencing the joy, and then in that you're in that, even though she's not physically here anymore, hasn't really gone anywhere. She's not in a body. So you're actually connecting with the essence of her when you're in that joy, in that emotion, and then of course you're going to feel much more connected, and then you don't feel like you've lost anyone, because actually you're connecting with her right then, even though she's not here physically. You start to recognize that she's not physical. She never was physical.
But also, John, it teaches us how frightened we are of joy as well. You know, because it brings up, you know, so it brings up all the grief of her loss, but also the hope, the audacity that we hope that we are still connected, because we believe in the separation. You know, it's almost like we're not frightened of the separation. The separation is natural and normal for us. You know, what's really frightening is that none of this is true. So as much as I would feel very moved by myself in that moment, I'm also drawn to just collapse back into the withdrawal. You know, it's almost like we have to practice joy.
Mm.
We have to keep daring.
You have to
be
keep choosing again and again.
Again and again, Miriam, again and again and again and again.
Mm. Yeah, so ongoing, moment by moment by moment. So if you notice, you're going out of joy, then you correct.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you found a good way to correct it in her instance with apparently losing a sister. You found a good correction. You just connected with the the fun times and the happiness and the joy. And then, when you're in that, you're with her. She's not anywhere else. She was never truly physical anyway. She's just part of the one mind.
Yeah.
And if you experience good times, connecting, that was part of the one-mindedness. So it's just it's reliving that, and then, well, when you experience it, you're in it again. It's not past. It's a present experience. And she's there with you, so you recognize you're not separate.
Mm-hmm.
She's there with you in that moment when you're feeling that. And so then there's no, well, why are you thinking that you've lost someone?
Yeah.
That's not actually true.
It makes me laugh as well that the bittersweetness was the way I connected, was the ways that she would tell me off. And there's something about an older sister. In Glasgow we talk about a big sister and a wee sister. So in Glasgow you would be normal to say, is that your wee sister or is that your big sister? Nothing to do with height proportions, but age. Big sister being older and wee sister being younger. So as my big sister, she was always telling me off. She was always going, "Maybe, what are you doing?" So it's funny that actually the confidence it's almost like disagreements are part of love. They're part of, like, what are you doing that way? That's crazy. You don't do it this way. You do it this way. It's like, it doesn't. Again, it's almost for me a bit about, doesn't matter what the form is. All that matters is only the love is real.
Yeah. So even in the telling off, there was love.
Yeah. In fact, you tell off almost as if to show the love. Yeah.
So that's the Holy Spirit just reinterpreting everything. Even in apparent conflict or telling off, there's a love that's shining through, and if you see that, then your mind is corrected and healed. Oh, very interesting. So so normally what we do is just have a little look at today's teaching, and then we'll go into the lesson if you like to do that. So let's find that. So it's a bit of, actually quite pertinent, because I talk about holy relationships and stuff. So what I generally ask people to do, Libby, is just read something off the screen. Read if you can read the quote for us, and read the first couple of paragraphs, and then just any thoughts that arise based on what you've read.
I do not understand the mystery of grace, only that it meets us where we are and does not leave us where it found us.
Nice. That's a nice feeling quote, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Does not leave us where it found us. So there's a
shift.
A sense of a shift.
Yeah. Today's quote by American writer Anne Lamott speaks about our inability to intellectually understand the seeming mystery of grace, and yet still allow its power to move us from a negative state of mind into a more positive one. How does this work, you may well ask? Yeshua gives a simple answer to this question in A Course in Miracles by telling us that you're still convinced that your understanding is a powerful contribution to the truth and makes it what it is, yet we have emphasized that you need understand nothing. Salvation is easy. just because it asks nothing, you cannot give right now. Yeah, I love that idea that you're never asked anything that you don't have the wherewithal to deal with.
Only what's right now, and this is quite a good line from the Course. You're still convinced that your understanding is a powerful contribution to the truth. It makes it what it is, and actually, it's not required. So,
It's interesting. We have a new person in the group, and she quite often says, "Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Why?" And one night I was saying, "Look, stop pretending you're leading an inquiry. You're just resistant." You know, and it was this idea of, the why can I need to understand can actually just be resistance. Yeah.
Yeah, and we convinced that our understanding, as he says, is a powerful contribution to the truth. But actually, grace is given whether you understand it or not. This is the power of it.
And gospel is not a book. It's not a Course in Miracles. It's not a Bible. It's not any of the big tomes, as useful as they are. Gospel's grace.
Yeah, that was Maria. That's why I shared that Martin Luther movie, because what he understood was that only by grace are we saved. That it wasn't through anything that we could do. So not by works, but by grace. And that simple realization was the basis of the whole Reformation of Europe. Quite extraordinary. Because he just understood suddenly that the guilt and the sin that the Catholic Church was built on was not true. And he saw that in Scripture. He saw, look, actually there's a way out of this in the Scripture. And that understanding led to the Reformation. Quite extraordinary. That's what reformed the whole church. Just the understanding that we are not bound by guilt, and that there is, by grace we are saved. So there was a liberation in his mind, and then he felt compelled to share that and to teach that for the rest of his life from that one insight. So, what. And then, what underlay the whole of the Renaissance was really, it wouldn't have happened without the Reformation. So actually, that whole unfolding of the human spirit was a result of the letting go of guilt and the freeing of the mind into grace, recognizing that there's grace irrespective. It doesn't matter what we do. Grace is given us. That was really his key insight. So yeah, just so interesting how a spiritual realization like that changes, the entire Western world from one man. Just having that insight and then having the courage to teach it really did change the world. Okay, so next one, Maria, if you want to read through these words, he's pointing us to an experience. I think you're muted. Just unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Where do you want me to start?
Through these words, he's pointing us to an experience.
Okay. Through these words, he is pointing us to an experience that is way beyond mere intellectual understanding. This experience is the mystery of grace. The quote speaks of, and the so-called mystic experience sought by so many spiritual seekers and experienced by the truly authentic spiritual teachers of this world, teachers of God, in the same terminology, because how else can you teach authentically but from your own experience?
Okay, makes sense.
I have a problem with this because I don't know if I'm wrong that in the film, yes, it's Grace, he has this an insight, sudden insight about the grace, okay? And that God forgives. I think I remember he says he is amazed to find that God forgives. But I think he mentioned something about faith, something about we then have to have faith. I can understand the term trust, trusting or not trusting something, but faith, how do you get faith? Is it related? Is it related in or not to grace? And can you say something about that?
I think the more you experience a state of grace, the more you have this kind of mystic experience, as it's been called, the more faith you have, because you've had an actual experience rather than just a concept, rather than just a dogma. So
yeah,
it
okay.
strengthens your faith now, because faith ultimately is experiential. You know,
Yes.
having faith in someone else's teaching, having faith in a dogma, having faith in just mental concepts is not the same as the faith you have when you've deeply experienced something, because then a part of your mind knows that is true.
So okay, so you don't need to have faith to receive grace. You can receive grace just by the grace of God. You just receive grace because God gives you grace. You don't have to earn it. He said you don't have to. In the Course in Miracles, you don't have to earn grace.
It's almost like we need a break. We need some help. So in Martin Luther's case, you know, he really struggled with this idea of sin and guilt, but he earnestly desired to find a way, and so his desire for some kind of salvation was what brought about that experience. He sat with that verse from Paul, and he just sat with it until he broke through and he understood it. So it was like he was given some grace, and then that grace strengthened his faith, and then he walked the path based on that experience that of faith, and really having faith in this other way that he'd been shown. And the more he walked it and the more he taught it, I think the more his faith was strengthened.
Yeah.
You teach what you need to learn, but what stimulated it was this act of grace. That one night where he was just really yearning for the truth, and he got shown what that truth was, and that then kick-started the whole journey for him. So I think we need to ask sincerely, even if he was still doubting. He didn't know the answer, but he wanted the answer sincerely. So he asked, and that asking was his true prayer, and then it was answered in this experience of grace, which then led to the development of much more faith. I mean, you would argue, without that mystic experience that he had, he wouldn't have done anything that he did. He wouldn't have written the 95 precepts and had the courage to nail them to the wall, and he wouldn't have written subsequent books and so on, because he wouldn't have had the experience that justified that level of faith. But because he had such a visceral experience, that was the bedrock then of his faith from then onwards. So
I think it also came, and I think the Course in Miracles, or is it David Hofmeister, or whoever talks about, it starts with an intense desire, your intense intention, an intense desire for truth. Okay, you want to know the truth, can be the catalyst that does everything. So that is what he was so intense about wanting to know the truth, that then he was given a break, as you call it, grace.
Yeah. So even if you don't have faith, if you really desire the truth, and you really want it, and he was prepared to sit the whole night with that problem, then it will come, and that that coming could be called an act of grace, which then is strengthened your faith sufficiently for you to walk the path that you need to walk.
Mhm.
You know, Maria, one of the things that for someone who doesn't have the passion, more likely has the willingness to be willing, 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 to be willing. But when things seem untangible, like, you know, words like grace or faith, and, you know, one of the things I kind of fall back on is a sense of gratitude being the same as joy and love and peace and grace. So if I can be grateful for no reason and not circumstances, you know, like instead of kind of going like the old-fashioned idea of gratitude was, well, I'm glad I'm not you, I'm me because you're worse off than me, but I'm glad, I wish I was you, and if I was you I'd be more grateful, you know, like comparisons, gratitude. Whereas there's something about gratitude which allows us to be in a state of grace where we're willing to surrender ideas of how it ought to be. You know, the idea of just being grateful for no reason, you know, just grateful to breathe and grateful to be. And, you know, sometimes I find that's easier for me to get a hold of, rather than thinking, because I get frightened about prayer, because I as a child I was white knuckling up, you know, beseeching an off-planet God who was deaf by all intents and purposes, you know. So I think, right, you know, if readiness is all, and that was the phrase that stuck with me today, then maybe the readiness to just be in a state of gratitude, regardless of circumstances.
Gratitude and grace. It's the same root word, actually.
Yeah.
And gratitude. It's very.
And there's so much to be grateful for. You know, that you know, there's so, you know, if you put your imagination to it, we're just surrounded by magnificence. You know, we're just surrounded by air and water and greenery and flowers and people and, you know.
And Zoom. And Zoom.
And Zoom.
Yeah, and Zoom. So
okay, shall I read the next bit?
Yeah,
then?
it's worth looking at the definition of a mystic briefly.
Yeah, it is worth looking at the definition of mystic briefly, which according to the Oxford Language Dictionary is a person who seeks by contemplation and self-surrender to obtain unity with or absorption into the deity or the absolute, or who believes in the spiritual apprehension of truths that are beyond the intellect. Oh.
Okay, so make sense, that definition?
Yeah, it does.
So grace is the spiritual apprehension of truths that are beyond the intellect, that the definition refers to. In other words, it's a state of being that can only really be experientially known. You can't really frame grace. You can't have a dogma about grace. You can't bottle it and say, well, there it is, which is why theologians and mystics typically don't speak the same language, because a mystic has had the experience and the theologian knows the term, the grace of God, but they haven't really experienced it. So they have only a conceptual knowledge of what the state might be, whereas the mystic has actually experienced it. And from that experience, knows, you know, this is knowledge. Knowledge is experiential, not just theoretical or conceptual. So you might ask, how can I experience grace consistently? A lot of people think, well, if I spend hours in meditation every day, become kind of a mystic, maybe this is the formula. Maybe I need to just drop out of the world and spend hours and hours in meditation. And so Yeshua says, well, this is one way that many spiritual seekers have tried, and ultimately this approach will succeed because of its purpose, because your purpose is to wake up. But he calls these methods very tedious and time consuming. All of them look to the future for release from a state of present unworthiness and inadequacy. So you're still trying to fix up something that's apparently wrong in the present, which is never going to work. But then he doesn't leave us there. He gives us a much better alternative, which leads us really beautifully into what you were mentioning earlier, Libby. So perhaps read that quote and the following thoughts about it.
Your way will be different, not in purpose, but in means. A holy relationship is a means of saving time. One instant spent together with your brother restores the universe to both of you. You are prepared. Now you need but to remember you need do nothing.
Wow. That's nice.
It's wonderful. And it's the doing, it's the comment on the doing, isn't it? It's trying to, he's talking about our brains, and that are, it's the part of us that's got the foot in the back, or the whip kind of going, come on, so you really recognize that part of us that is always trying to, get somewhere or obtain, or work it out, or just control it.
Yeah. And you need do nothing.
It's about surrender.
Into that what he calls the holy instant. One instant spent together with your brother restores the universe to both of you. And therein lies the grace. So we see how the holy instant and this idea of grace and the holy relationship all really work together beautifully to help us to free our minds. In the holy instant, in the moment, when we really connect with someone, we really feel their presence and that we are one with them. Therein lies the full correction of the mind. That we are one and not separate.
That feeling has happened to me a few times, but never in a romantic sense. And each time the things have fallen away, like the labels, age and gender, and they just fall away. Like your name falls away.
I'll share a couple of experiences I had, just briefly to inspire you. So, in two instances, I was with my partners at the time, and just deeply looked into their eyes, and it was like such an intense experience that I felt this Kundalini energy rising. It's just like, and it was too much, and I actually just passed out because the experience was so intense of that energy releasing in that moment of like actually seeing beyond the veil and experiencing that I wasn't really separate, and they weren't separate from me, that it was just really one of us there. So and that happened in relationship with others. There was no meditation or any other practice other than just being present with them and really feeling that. And then it was like, the first time I didn't know what was happening. The second I was like, I know this. This is not good.
I'm going.
It's like gone, and I literally just drop, and then it's like man down for a minute or two, and then I come back. Fortunately, I didn't hurt myself, but the energy is so intense. This is kind of what he's pointing to. In a holy relationship, when you really feel that oneness. It's like the fast track to grace, because
you could no more hold a grievance against a person in that moment than flying there.
Well, in the moment there were no grievances, that's for sure. But Yeah, the ego being what it is, comes back, and you forget about these experiences. But
Indeed.
in that moment, it's such a pure experience of oneness, and so intense that I just couldn't, handle the energy. I actually passed out.
Yeah.
But it's a demonstration of what he's saying here, that the holy relationship is really the fast track to grace. If you can experience it with another person and connect together into that energy,
Sure.
it's giving
And
us
it
the
makes
fast
sense
track.
because it's the belief in the separation.
Mm.
It's the belief in the separate individuals that's keeping us here. It's the in the mystic, the mythical me, as Nook Sanchez and Corinne call it, the mythical me. Right, I'll carry on reading. So he's telling us that holy relationships are the fast track to grace, will save us a lot of time, and we need do nothing. Why is this? You may be wondering to yourself, because in forgiving others for their apparent sins, we also forgive or let go of our own perceived sins and release ourselves from the struggle to overcome the idea of sin and its attendant guilt. If you watched yesterday's recommended movie about the life and legacy of Martin Luther, I shall go to bed and watch it now, Maria. You'll have noticed that sin and guilt were major obstacles he faced and overcame through the experience of God's grace. But to have that experience, he had to wrestle with his deep-seated belief in sin and guilt and intensely contemplate the meaning of this quote from Paul's letter to the Ephesians in the New Testament. For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. I love that. No one can boast.
And Martin Luther really struggled with that. He'd read that line many times, but he couldn't really grasp it. And then one night he was so determined that he broke through, and he realized, that the spiritual truth behind that is that we are saved by grace, and that's just given freely. It's not what we, anything that we can actually do. And that was such a liberation from him, from this thought system of sin and guilt, which is all about, what you've done. And
Right.
then the atonement idea of the Catholic Church. Oh, well, you have sinned and you are guilty, and now you've got to somehow atone for that. And in that moment, he was free of that entire thought system. And that realization was what really directed the course of the rest of his life. That one mystic experience directed everything that he did. And that's why he wrote those 95 precepts, and he had the courage to challenge the Catholic Church, because his own experience told him that they were wrong and that there was another way. And in fact, he could see it in Scripture. He said, well, this is in the Bible, so why aren't they telling people this? Why are they glossing over this and focusing on the sin and the guilt when it's very clearly written, for it is by grace you have been saved. And this is a message that needs to get out there to the masses, so that people realize they are not condemned, that they are saved by grace. And that was really, as I said, the basis of the whole Reformation, is that he was teaching people a higher way of connecting with God through grace. And that was the underpinning of our entire, the Reformation underpinned the Renaissance. So that's the underpinning of the entire progress of humanity, just from one realization like that, which was a spiritual realization. So you start to see just how profound these kinds of experiences can be for individuals, and then for human history. If he hadn't had that insight, then maybe the Reformation wouldn't have happened. Maybe it would have happened in another way. But he was the chosen vehicle for this grace to then come into the world and bless and heal the world. Okay. So Maria, if you want to read the
Okay.
next paragraph.
But what does forgiving others actually mean? You may be wondering. Simply answer it. Forgiving someone means that we have let go of our own negative thoughts and emotions like sin, guilt, fear, and anger that have been stirred up by our relationship with them. So, letting go is the key word here, letting go.
Yeah. So when you forgive someone, you are really letting go of your own negative thoughts and emotions that have been triggered by that person. They're
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
trigger. So
yeah,
then it becomes really, really clear what I need to do, because too often people go, well, I need to forgive this person, but they have no idea what that really means. What does that actually mean? I forgive you. So, therefore we get just very clear about what it means. And it means
yeah,
letting go of your own negative thoughts and emotions, period. Whatever those may be, whatever the justification for them seems to be, that's just a justification. And all that's happening in the situation is that your own ego, in the form of the sin, the guilt, the fear, the anger, and whatever other emotions, has been triggered to arise in your mind, so that you can look at it and so that you can let it go.
Okay, without these blocks to the awareness of love's presence, as Yeshua calls them in the introduction to the same text, we naturally start to become aware again of this true essence of beingness arising in our mind, and can't help feeling this presence, which is unconditional love. When in the company of, or even thinking of the person who we formerly resented, hated, feared, or felt any other negative emotion towards, our relationships with them is now wholly one in at same terms, because through genuine forgiveness or letting go, we have allowed grace of perfect unconditional love to enter and heal. So actually, letting go is the same as forgiveness, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no difference. I just prefer, I've called this community the art of letting go, because it's very direct. It's a very direct pointer to what you actually need to do. You say, I just need to let it go, as opposed to I just need to forgive it. I think the letting go is clearer. Okay, yeah, we all sort of have an understanding. Yes, I need to just let it go. It means I'm not thinking about it, I'm not feeling it. Whereas I need to forgive something, or I need to forgive another person. I think many people in the Christian teaching have tried and struggled for many years to try and do that, and they don't really know what they're trying to do. This is not.
And also, you know what, Jonah? It's a bit arrogant to think I forgive you. Because
this is a pseudo forgiveness I mentioned.
Yeah, because we don't know. I don't know. Maybe the opposite. Maybe they are the ones that need to forgive me. Sometimes I don't know. I find it difficult to say to somebody, "I forgive you," but to let go of what I feel about this person for whatever they did or didn't or whatever, to let go of all those feelings inside me about it, that's good. That's fine. It feels more, besides more genuine, feels more humble and real.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's very clear, it's very direct, and there's no room for ambiguity, and there's no room for pseudo forgiveness, where you go, oh well, I forgive you because I'm somehow the superior one, you the miserable sinner, and I'm oh so self-righteous. But my teaching says I should forgive you, so I do. I go through the motions and I say I forgive you, but actually in my heart I haven't forgiven you at all. I still see you as a sinner.
Yeah.
So again, we change the language, because that kind of forgiveness has given forgiveness a bad rap.
Yeah.
kind of pseudo forgiveness, which isn't forgiveness. People go, oh, well, if that's forgiveness, I want nothing else. I want nothing to do with it, because they see through the facade. It's not forgiveness at all. So we just change the language and we call it letting go to get around all that, all the history of forgiveness and the word. It's just dropped away, and we talk about letting go, which doesn't really have any of that. It's just a very practical term, down to earth term. Yes, I let go of it, and there's nothing actually so mystical about that. We're almost trying to demystify this. Say, actually, it's really, really simple. Just let go of the thoughts and emotions that don't serve you, and everything else will follow. What could be simpler?
Mm.
Well, it's still not easy because the ego resists letting go, but at least there's clarity. You know very clearly what it is you need to do, even if you find there's resistance to doing it. Whereas if you're not sure what to do, you're ambiguous, then the ego's in charge, because it thrives on confusion, and it's going to try and give you a false idea of forgiveness. To confuse you and stop you from doing the genuine radical forgiveness, which is actually going to free your mind, going to convince you actually doing something spiritual and you're on the right track when you're not.
It says, stated another way, forgiveness means that God, or pure formless awareness of perfect love, cancels out everything else that we have made up to replace it, and restores our mind to an awareness of itself as it was originally created, and remains in truth.
Any thoughts on that? God, pure formless awareness of perfect love, just cancels out everything else. So the letting go is the canceling out. Simply saying this isn't true, this isn't real, and so all that's left is this awareness of itself.
For me, it's that, you used to say in I know kind of religious terms, they say, judgment is thine, says the Lord, kind of he will judge and all that, and I think the most important thing is that we can't understand heaven's justice, because we are the duality, we are the judgment, we are the fall from grace, we are the separation. So in the letting go, then I suppose what you're saying is you're letting go everything you know so far up until now, because none of it's going to be of any use, because we can't really house heaven's justice, because heaven's justice says that there is no duality, i.e. no victims and no villains and no guilt and no, so there's nothing to forgive. So I suppose, yeah, Johnny, you're right. The best we can do is let go, unless we're enlightened beings, and then we can partake in heaven's justice, which would be wonderful. But
you don't get to that state unless you fully let go of all of your stuff.
I like to take old thoughts, like old sayings like the sins of the fathers will be visited on the sons. Was deemed to be an off-planet god, kind of going in, if I'm going to smite your sons as well, But basically, if we don't let go and get off the wheel, then our poor sons are going to take on our nonsense. It's like let go for your own sake, but for others as well. Because if we don't get off the wheel, then the chances are we're going to perpetrate our own shame and guilt. So so we have to forgive ourselves by letting go.
Yeah. So just making it very, very simple, very straightforward. This isn't a complicated course. He's saying it's actually really, really simple. Just get very, very clear about what it is that you've got to do. That doesn't always mean it's easy to do, because when you're letting go of everything. He's saying you're letting go of an entire thought system, you're letting go of a personal identity, you're letting go of a reality. When you let go, you're letting go of all of it. And the ego really has a lot of resistance to that. But there's no ambiguity. That's what I love about Course in Miracles teaching. He's not being ambiguous in any way, shape, or form. He's simply saying, well, you need to let it all go, not some of it. You're not going to retain any of it. It's letting your thoughts and emotions about all of it, everything in this world, go, and that's when you'll be free. Okay, so Libby, if you want to read the next one, and if the negative thoughts and emotions.
And if the negative thoughts and emotions that seem to replace love and created the dysfunctional relationship and circumstances in your life are no longer there, it makes perfect sense that these relationships and circumstances, which are just the effects of these false causes, must also change. And you will find that you are no longer in the same dysfunctional relationships and circumstances as you were before the coming of grace. This is why Yeshua has given us daily mind training lessons to help us practice forgiving or letting go of the blocks to the pure formless awareness of love's presence that arises in our minds daily and experience the peace, happiness, and freedom that are the inevitable consequences of this awareness, also known as grace.
Yeah, so I hope that kind of connects the dots. So letting go, you can see clearly how letting go or forgiveness is connected to grace. That you can't say, well, now I'll have grace, but you can choose to let go. So that's your conscious choice. That's how you change your perception, and then you allow grace to come. And the more you experience these mystic experiences of grace, the stronger your faith is, and the more likely you are to let go, because you've had the experience of the benefits of it. And so it becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. I choose to let go. I experience some grace. That encourages me to let go some more, because it was such a beneficial experience, which in turn stimulates more faith. And so we go back. We journey back to God that way. Sometimes it just starts with, okay, whatever, I'm willing to let go. That's one way of kickstarting a process. I really want to let this go. I'm willing to let go, and I'll keep trying and persevering until I do let go. And then another way that Martin Luther found was he just really desired to understand, and he desired so much, so intently, that a moment of grace was given him, where he had an insight into the nature of truth, and that then led him on his journey, and to strengthen his faith sufficiently for him to really start his journey in earnest. And then he built on that with his own experiences as he went. He built on that faith that he got from grace. So yeah, I hope you see how those two are connected, and that you, what I call connecting the dots of forgiveness and grace in the Holy Spirit's thought system. So can you see how letting go directly leads to grace, and grace reinforces the truth that you need to let go of whatever else is bothering you. So grace is like the absolute truth. Just going to show you something. I just managed to close that. That was good. Grace is absolute truth, and forgiveness is an illusion, as he says, but it's the only illusion that restores your mind to the truth. It has no more illusions. So we look here. Grace is this: when you experience just this God, love, oneness, pure formless awareness, you're still apparently human and seemingly having a body. You experience that we can call grace, and then the relationship between grace and letting go is that when you let go of whatever your negative thoughts and emotions are in this red scrum, you're opening yourself up to the experience of grace to come into your mind and actually experience this awareness firsthand for yourself. So forgiveness or letting go leads to grace, and grace in turn stimulates you to forgive or let go even more. Because having had the experience of grace, it's such a beautiful experience. You say, well, why wouldn't I want more of it? And the way I got it was to let go. And so grace and letting go work hand in glove in order to restore your mind ultimately back to a state of pure grace, where there's nothing else, where there's just this pure formless awareness of perfect love. Okay, so happy with that teaching.
Yeah.
So let's have a look at today's lesson, shall we? Where are we? Lesson is, by grace I live, and by grace I am released. So let's take turns reading the lesson, and I'm going to share my screen. We'll do a bit of translation. So for Libby's benefit, what we're doing is just changing some of the words, changing some of the language from more traditional Christian terminology like God and Christ and Holy Spirit to terms like pure formless awareness of perfect love for God, and Christ is the true self, and the Holy Spirit is the remembrance of perfect love.
Jono,
As we go.
can you do me a favor? Can you do me a favor and can you send me? Do you have at least a glossary of all these new terms?
I do actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I think some people do. I don't. Just I would like to, because sometimes I get a bit confused about them.
I have no problem with the Christian language at all. Sometimes I change the he's to the she's for fun, but just to shake it up a bit.
Well, what we find, this evolved in the course of doing many hours of discussion on these lessons and the text. And what I found was that to help people to understand it, I'd say, okay, we'll just change the language. What do we understand by God? And then we came up with pure formless awareness of perfect love as a pointer to a state of mind, a state of grace, really, because it's an experience. And so then you have words that are pointing you directly to the experience, which is a good word if it stimulates the experience of it. So, and it takes a lot of people out of the misconceptions around God that they might have been brought up with the Christian religion.
Yeah, there's a lot of woundedness around religion.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, we'll just change the language then. It doesn't need to be that language, because words are symbols twice removed from reality. They just point us to the truth, as Yeshua himself says. So use a better pointer that points you into the experience of what it's talking about. God as a pointer for a lot of people isn't a good pointer because of their past experience with it. So use another pointer. And then, what starts to happen is the words open up for them and are useful to take them into an expanded experience of grace, which is very helpful for them if they can experience that grace in their experience. Then the lessons are working on another level. It's not conceptual; it's actually experiential. And given that he's talking about grace as an experience, that's particularly pertinent for this lesson. Okay, so Libby, if you want to read the original, that's as it is in the course, and then we'll translate it.
So you guys are at 169, yeah. Grace is an aspect of the love of God which is most like the state prevailing in the unity of truth. It is the world's most lofty aspiration, for it leads beyond the world entirely. It is past learning, yet the goal of learning. For grace cannot come until the mind prepares itself for true acceptance. Grace becomes inevitable instantly in those who have prepared a table where it can be gently laid and willingly received, an altar clean and holy for the gift.
Okay, so and we'll do a bit of translation. So grace is an aspect of so God is love of God. We translate as pure formless awareness of perfect love. That's so we won't say the love of pure formless awareness of perfect love. We'll just say the pure formless awareness of perfect love, which is a direct pointer into a state of mind. And this is most like the state prevailing in the unity of truth. Okay? So he's saying it's very much like truth. It is the world's most lofty aspiration. It leads beyond the world entirely. So it's going to lead you out of the world entirely, is what he's saying. And it's past learning, yet the goal, this is an error, I think. Yet the goal of learning doesn't make sense. Yet the goal is learning, I think is what it should say. Yet the goal is learning. So it's past learning, but the goal is learning, because grace cannot come until the mind prepares itself for true acceptance. So we must learn to prepare ourselves for grace. And this is the change of mind Yeshua is training us to do, the transformation of our perception. And becomes inevitable instantly in those who have prepared a table where it can be gently laid and willingly received, an altar clean and holy for the gift. So we prepared a table using metaphors, can be gently laid and willingly received. An altar, so again using imagery, but to make that a bit clearer, we normally translate altar as foundation. So a foundation in your mind that is clean and holy and holy and wholly aware. Clean and wholly aware for the gift. So in a clean, wholly aware mind, you are ready for the gifts of grace. That's what Yeshua is saying here. Okay. Then you want to read that?
I have to say something. I have to get up early tomorrow to work.
Yeah, Maria, we're both struggling here a wee bit because it's been a long time, Jono.
Yes.
It's now 11:15, and there's so much to take in. I think this lesson, I'm looking at this lesson, and it's 4 pages long in my book, and I don't think I can do this for another 3 pages.
No.
Okay, so do you want to leave it here? Do you want to do a quick meditation on this, maybe?
I would like to just go to sleep if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's very late. Because I've had such a big day with marrying a couple as well and stuff, and a lot of traveling there and back. I now have a bolt of pain here. And I just know that I'm not going to be able to be present for 3 more pages while I'm going, God, my head's really sore, you know.
Well, why don't we finish off with a little meditation?
Yeah, just a nice wee meditation would be lovely. Eh?
Okay, so just closing your eyes. With your feet shoulder width apart, back straight. Cup your hands in your lap, close your eyes, and just start off by taking a nice deep breath in through the nose. Breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises. Subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. Just pausing at the top of the inhale. Just check in and scan your mind, so noticing any thoughts, any related emotions, any sensations in the body going on. Particularly anything that feels negative. It's all limiting, contracted, constricting. If there's pain in the body, you mentioned some pain, Libby, just observe that and breathe into it. Nice deep breath in. Feel like you're breathing in the very essence of life. It's flowing into every pore, every cell, every muscle of your body, every part of your mind, every fiber of your being. It's in the light. In that light, no darkness is possible, so all pain or suffering, tension in any way, shape, or form simply isn't real. Remind yourself that by grace I live, and by grace I am released, not sometime in the future. So you're just being willing to let go, blow it all away with the breeze of your breath, a sense of exhaling out any dark thoughts and emotions like cloud patterns, just leaving you going, gone into the nothingness that they really are. Blow it all away, the breeze of your breath, and in the stillness and the silence, experience a touch of this grace. Accept this pure formless awareness of perfect love. Blow it all out, exhaling out so you're just rest in this graceful, peaceful state. Recognize there's nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. You surrender in to the state that is not learned. Yeshua says grace is not learned. Final step must go beyond all learning. So you let go, you surrender to God. Nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, nothing else to think about. The next couple of minutes of deep silence, just sink inwards, deeper and deeper with each breath. Just keep watching your breath. Sinking deeply into the grace, observe the breath to be very present. Recognize this really. And you sink inwards, the grace of God, peace of God, it's been called, passes all understanding. You give yourself this experience, just a perfect grace, a pure, formless awareness, a perfect love arising in your mind. Sink into grace. Say, by grace I live. By grace I am released. Grace I live. Grace I am released. There's nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, nothing else to think about. Just really relax, be still, drop into the grace. The next couple of minutes of deep silence and experience it as your own experience. Just resting here in the quietness of grace for a few minutes of deep silence. If any thoughts come up to seemingly disturb this deep state of grace, just observe them casually and be willing to let them go. You exhale, just blow them away. The breeze of your breath into the nothingness they really are. Going, going, gone. So gently coming back, this deep state of grace, to an awareness of your body and the breath, senses in the world, and on the count of 3, and to open your eyes. So 1, just breathing in, noticing how so you notice as you breathe in, air flowing in, chest and the stomach rise up. Pause at the top of the inhale. Any thoughts and emotions, just observe them. If there's anything that doesn't feel like grace, just very open, expansive, easy, light. Anything that's difficult, challenging, contracted, constricting in any way, shape, or form. So just observe our attachment. Count of 2, you're going to exhale. A sense of blowing everything away. Notice the air flowing out. Your mouth, the chest, and the stomach suck back in. So the hair flows out, connecting in with your body again, being very present. Count of 2, notice the weight of your body. Pressing down into the chair, your feet touching the ground. And just observe what you're hearing, what you're feeling, touching, tasting, smelling. All these sense perceptions can happen within the field of grace. So this deeper awareness, the pure formless awareness of perfect love, is grace. This is actually what underlies everything. So you're going to carry this grace with you the rest of the evening and on into your week ahead. Just remind yourself a couple more times tonight, by grace I live, by grace I am released, and by grace I give, and so by grace I do release. And so on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes and just continue on in this hopefully very peaceful, calm state of grace, which will carry you through the rest of your evening and on into a very deep sleep and a graceful day and week ahead, which is what I wish for you. So that brings us to the end of the meditation and the session. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you in the week, I hope. Join us tomorrow afternoon at 12:30 if you can. Otherwise, Tuesday afternoon, same time, and Tuesday evening we've got another session at 8:30. So join us again soon, Libby. It's nice to have you. Okay. Thanks for joining. Namaste.